The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
After 21 hours of face-to-face negotiations in Pakistan, the United States and Iran have failed to reach an agreement, leaving a fragile 2-week ceasefire in doubt. And so far, neither side has indicated what will happen after that 14-day truce expires. Now, in response to all this, President Trump has announced that the U.S. will now impose a naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Joining us now with some insight on the latest developments is our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. So, Reggie, Trump said today, as we've heard, that the U.S. Navy would immediately begin a blockade to stop ships from entering or leaving the Strait of Hormuz. So what immediate impact would a blockade like that have?
Well, a couple of different things here. Number one, analysts have said that a blockade is an act of war. So this is now a question as to whether the Iranian government is going to see another potential fracture in the very fragile ceasefire that is in place. And if that is the case, do we see Iran starting to escalate in terms of carrying out some kind of aggression in the Gulf region? Number one. Number two, it's not really clear yet how Donald Trump intends to implement this naval blockade, whether there are American vessels on either side of the Strait of Hormuz, and how he's also going to carry out what he says will be interdicting of ships that have paid a toll to Iran. So the American president is very clear here that he's angry that a deal couldn't be reached, even though he said that he didn't care if a deal could be reached. And he said that there is mine-clearing vessels in the region to try and open up and make the waterway a lot more safe. And this is a question. Is this some kind of, economic pressure on Iran to not only take away the ability for tolls to be paid to them, but also to make it impossible for them to get any of their energy exports out to the world that needs it? But we've also seen that Iran is willing to endure pain in this war. And if that's the case, will Iran suffer through this, knowing that the rest of the world is ultimately going to be paying a price from a decision by the President of the United States? So there's a lot to try and watch for in terms of what the president's military plans are in terms of this blockade through the day today and as we head into the week.
And let's just talk about the negotiations and how they went yesterday. There's still no deal after 21 hours. So what was the biggest roadblock here?
Well, for the Americans, it was Iran being non-committal on ceasing uranium enrichment going forward, which is interesting because remember last year during strikes, Donald Trump said that the nuclear programs and capabilities of Iran had been completely obliterated. And here we are now with nuclear still being an issue for the United States. The Strait of Hormuz was also another hurdle that was not able to be cleared. On the Iranian side, they were angry at some of the demands coming from the United States, including matters having to do with enrichment. So when you have two sides that are looking at each other saying your requests are fundamentally unserious, it was clear that this gap was going to be too wide to bridge. This becomes a question of what happens next, because as the dust settles, there are no further plans here for communication between the two. Maybe during a back channel there will be, but publicly there's no further commitment here to agreement. So there was one talk, and it's unclear if the United States ultimately thought they'd be able to get a breakthrough in less than a day.
And lastly, Trump doesn't care if there's a deal. That's what he's said. So really, my question for you is, where does it all go from here? And, what does it mean for the Iranian people?
Well, I mean, number one, this was originally about helping the Iranian people. Donald Trump said that the U.S. would be there to help during the protests in January. And then this week or last week, he talked about destroying all of civilization. This is going to be a question of the mood that Donald Trump is in. He was speaking with Fox News this morning and said that military vessels remain in the region, that America is still locked and loaded, and that he is planning to further, quote unquote, destruct Iran if he feels a need to. So the threat for this war has not gone away, even though we're in the middle of a very, very fragile ceasefire. And there's a question here as to whether the end of negotiations or maybe some kind of conflict that goes on between Israel and Lebanon becomes a flint, and we ultimately see this war pick up. Negotiations were only going to lead to more negotiations. If the talks are no longer happening, does that mean things revert back to where they were at the end of last week?
All right, Reggie, thanks so much for these critical updates.
Thank you.
That is Reggie Cecchini, our Washington correspondent.